Who's right? Who's wrong? You decide. Hash it out. Brought to you by Redmond Wholesale.
Hi, I'm Carl Markman with Redmond Wholesale. We're incredibly proud of our history of educating and partnering with the broker and banker community to prepare you for what's next. We've always been committed to same-day turn times on initial underwrites, which allows us to earn your business each and every day. We're happy to sponsor the following program.
Anderson, your host for Hash It Out. And this is my first show, by the way. It's brought to you by Redmond Wholesale. So I hope you enjoy the content, and I'm going to enjoy doing these shows. It's good to be back in the video and talking to all of you out there. Anyway, my guest today really needs no introduction. He's a good friend, Dave Stevens, the current president and CEO of the Mortgage Bankers Association and the former FHA commissioner. And I will say, I'm not saying this because he's here on the camera, but in my 35 years in the business, he's probably the best FHA commissioner that I've ever worked with, and primarily because he came from the streets. In fact, Dave, you and I kind of started at the same time, but I think I'm a couple years older than you. But in fact, I remember when I hit the streets passing out a rate sheet when they hit 10%, and my realtors told me, "That's it, we'll never sell another house." Do you remember that?
Well, Mike, it takes people with our hair color to remember how we made rate sheets back then with rub-on letters and numbers.
Exactly. I had an IBM Selective 3 typewriter.
There we go.
And then when we got the corrective,
they wouldn't buy me the typewriter with the X key, so I had to use the tape to erase the letters. It was,
and I used to use carbon paper on my loan applications, and I'd get it all over my shirt. Yeah. So I fixed that. I started wearing black shirts. No one ever knew. Anyway, let's start the show here. We only got like 4 or 5 minutes. All right, Dave, there's a lot going on with TRID. I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing about TRID, but I still originate loans. And I got to tell you, I got yelled at for the first time about 2 weeks ago, new construction. We've had some nasty weather here like you have in D.C. And one delay after another. Rate expired. Thank God rates stayed the same. So that was an issue. But the problem is a young couple had to move out of their house, okay, a rental, and it was a big apartment complex, and they had a deadline, and someone else was moving in. Well, we came down, we finally got ready to close, and I brought up the 3-day waiting period. And of course, the buyer said, "Oh, no, you don't understand. We can't wait 3 days. We need to move now. Supposed to be out of the apartment tomorrow." You know how the movie ends. Yeah. Needless to say, they screamed at me. They didn't believe me. I told them to write their congressman, write their senator. But, and I don't know if it's so doom and gloom what we're hearing about TRID, but on the MBA, you guys have done a great job. But what is the MBA doing right now? There's seems to be issues with delays. I'm hearing that there's issues, loans being bought back with simple little stupid little typos, little things like that. Why don't you share with us what's on the radar for the MBA, or are we kind of in a stalemate because of election year?
Well, I don't think the election has anything to do with the TRID rule, but so here's sort of what's happening with TRID, and everybody who's watching this knows this, depending on where you sit in the what kind of your company you operate and who you sell loans to. If you're selling correspondent, so whole loans to some of the aggregators, each aggregator is different. I won't mention them by name, but I can tell you that there's, one big bank has a high rejection rate, while the other one is got a much more lenient perspective. And the challenge on the correspondent side is if you have minor errors and the loan is rejected, you got to quickly scramble to see, is it correctable? What we're hearing is about half of those end up being correctable pretty quickly. Others are a little more complicated. The good news is the point you made is we had a rate rally. I can only imagine what would happen if rates hadn't rallied, because at least if you have to move a pipeline, you're moving it at a plus, not a negative, which is in terms of net impact to the balance sheet. So that's one issue. If you're selling direct through a cash window, or you're issuing directly with the GSEs, that's probably not impacting you, the minor error challenge, but it is a real problem in the jumbo space, the non-agency space, because all of the jumbo buyers are running the loans through due diligence firms. They're identifying any TRID error, and those we're hearing of very high rejection rates on entire pipelines being delivered, and that's causing a lot of problem. We've met with, I talked to Director Cordray just over the holiday in December He quickly responded and sent that, what I think is now infamous letter, directly to me, which got picked up by the media, to me and NBA, which got picked up by the media, that said, hey, look, if you make minor errors, you can correct them. And it gave a whole variety of other kinds of cover about enforcement, et cetera, related to the rule. Problem is, the legal counsel advising a lot of lenders, the legal counsel advising due diligence firms, and the legal counsel advising whole loan investors didn't buy the letter. And, we all have the PHH case clearly in front of us, where there's an example of the Bureau not adhering to a previous letter written by a federal regulator. And so our steps right now are trying to convince the Bureau to codify as much of that letter into some formal publication from the Bureau. We'd love it to be in the Federal Register. That's probably not going to happen. If anything could happen, maybe some of that can be republished into either an FAQ or some form of advisory bulletin from the CFPB. They're very resistant to do that. I won't waste time explaining why. But I will say we signed off on a joint letter with a group of financial trade group CEOs, the bigger ones. And the director has set up a meeting with us for next week to talk one more time about this issue. I think we all agree this is a matter of time, right, Mike? Eventually we're going to get our systems so that they can place the numbers in the forms in the appropriate way. And we're going to get upgrades to from all our software vendors that allows us to create documents. And we're going to understand the timeline and notification process a little better. Won't change the problem you had. And that's where, the consumer just needs to close and something doesn't time out just right, and you still have to give that 3 days. That's going to require change in the rule. We're going to have to start aggregating stories around those particular examples and take it back first to the Bureau. But more likely, this will become something we address more aggressively in the next administration, starting in 2017. So right now it's about clarity. It's getting the Bureau to make clear what constitutes an error that cannot be fixed, allow us to fix the others, put that in some formal document, and work with industry as we continue to come up with things like how do we disclose a piggyback in such and such a way, or a construction perm, single close, those kinds of products that we're still struggling with a bit.
Right. One thing that I've noticed, in fact, I think you and I talked a few weeks ago, one of the things I've really noticed is the inside staff, processors, underwriters, closers, these poor people are being worked to the bone over TRID, trying to meet these deadlines and making sure things happen on time and there's no errors. But I got to tell you, I think that the alcohol is the dollar volume is going way up on alcohol from all these people. And I mean, I know they're stressed out. I see them all the time. And they're like this. And but Dave, do you think the CFPB really gets it? Look, I've been up there when I did my stuff with NAM, and I know they listen. But you really think that we're going to see any kind of change, more common sense? Do you think?
Well, guys, this is such an unpopular subject. I think, the Bureau's sole mission is to make sure that the consumer understands the documents that they're getting. And there's still a large number of very activist civil rights groups that go to the Bureau every day, believing that there's still participants in the industry that quote unquote bait and switch. And despite how distasteful it is for any of us to hear, particularly someone like me and you who've grown up in this business as loan originators and all the jobs we've done, it is what they think. And to the folks in the Bureau on a large scale, they think that the industry will eventually get through this, and so they're not going to overreact. There's this, general assumption that we're still closing loans, and the director will ask me point blank, and as will his top lieutenants, are people not closing loans then? And my response is no. Lenders are closing loans. They serve their communities and they have to close the loans. It's painful. It's costing a ton. And to your point about operational staff, processors, underwriters, et cetera, they're working themselves to death to try to meet these settlement dates under a lot of pressure, not just from the sales force, but from the consumer who's desperate to get into their new home. So, it's really troubling. But I will say, Mike, you and I talked earlier about Hillary Clinton's town hall meeting, and I know that wasn't going to be the core of our conversation, but there was the follow-up question during that town hall by that individual who asked her the question about the mortgage process. And he said, I just bought a home. It was really hard. It took forever. And I thought in the back of my mind, that's from the rules, man. I mean, the ability for
That's helpful.
The ability for you or anyone
helpful for us.
Yeah, you cannot provide the customer service you used to be able to provide, because if you don't follow and adhere to every step of these guidelines and these rules, forget common sense. You have to meet the QM standard. You have to disclose the way it's obligated. Even the consumer, him or herself, cannot say, hey, man, I understand I get a waiting period, but I'll waive it, like we used to be able to do on rescissions for select cases. That's all out the window. And so these experiences of angry consumers are only going to increase. And some people are going to try to blame our industry. Our job at MBA is going to be to make sure that the mirror is a reflection on the regulators who put these rules in place, that they understand that in the effort to protect consumers, that this blowback is also an outcropping of that. And somewhere between those two measures, we're going to be looking to make changes in some of this stuff in the next couple of years.
Right. All right. Well, listen, Dave, it was great seeing you, and I know we're going to do this again. Thankful as always. I appreciate everything y'all do. And you're awfully tan, Dave. I mean, you're tan right now. I know you had a little beach trip. Looked like fun. Thanks for the invite, by the way. I appreciate it.
All right.
Anyway,
Take care.
Anyway, we'll talk soon.
What's the ultimate measure of a wholesale lender? Commitment. Remen Wholesale is committed to our broker partners. It's why we provide a huge educational platform offering everything from webinars to seminars to individualized training tools in the program you just watched. We understand that our role is to make you look great in front of your customers and referral sources so you can earn more business and increase your income. Find out more at RemenWholesale.com.
This is Mortgage News Network.